2 weeks ago, he tweeted that he is now somehow feeling optimistic after the guy he despised and the movement he has opposed with his whole heart and soul just won. He wrote, quote, "I've been trying to figure out why I'm more optimistic now than I was before the election, even though I was so against the guy who won. I know now. MAGA is not my mortal enemy, and neither is the extreme left. My mortal enemy is the establishment, and they have been defeated." Now, despite being a far-left commentator who has demonized conservatives for literally decades, he now says that MAGA is not his enemy.
Matt Walsh has had enough of this unity act, as he puts it, from these lefties, such as Cenk Uygur, and Matt Walsh absolutely blasts them for it. Let's see what Matt Walsh has to say.
But even before that, we've seen some well-known figures on the left move to the right. Now, although in basically every case, they'll deny that they're moving to the right. Instead, they'll say something like, "The left left me," which always turns out to be at most only partially true, but also partially their way of not having to actually admit that they were wrong about something. So you probably remember Mika and Joe on Morning Joe solemnly explaining their decision to go to Mar-a-Lago and meet with Donald Trump. They said that they agreed to restart communications with Trump and find common ground in order to heal our national divides and put an end to political warfare. Watch.
What we did agree on was to restart communications. My father often spoke with world leaders with whom he and the United States profoundly disagreed. That's a task shared by reporters and commentators alike. We had not spoken to President Trump since March of 2020, other than a personal call Joe made to Trump on the morning after the attempt on his life in Butler, Pennsylvania. In this meeting, President Trump was tearful, he was upbeat, he seemed interested in finding common ground with Democrats on some of the most divisive issues. And for those asking why we would go speak to the president-elect during such fraught times, especially between us, I guess I would ask back, why wouldn't we? 5 years of political warfare has deeply divided Washington and the country. We have been as clear as we know how in expressing our deep concerns about President Trump's actions and words in the coarsening of public debate. But for nearly 80 million Americans, election denialism, public trials, and January 6th were not as important as the issues that moved them to send Donald Trump back to the White House with their vote. Joe and I realize it's time to do something different. And that starts with not only talking about Donald Trump, but also talking with him.
So they talk about this meeting as if it was Lee and Grant at Appomattox or something. In reality, it doesn't actually matter whether Morning Joe gets along with Trump or not. They have zero impact on the country either way. But in any case, before, that was still them sort of moderating a bit. And before Morning Joe's big kumbaya moment, there were other examples of this sort of thing. Anna Kasparian of the Young Turks had been making the rounds for months, criticizing the left for its excesses. Of course, somebody like Bill Maher has been doing the same thing for much longer. And there are several other examples of this kind of thing. And these are all different people and different cases that shouldn't necessarily all be thrown into the same basket. But I do have some concerns about this now familiar routine of leftists seeing the light, or sort of seeing it, and then being immediately embraced by many on the right, even celebrated and amplified as voices of reason. And I think the best way to explain my concerns is to point to another one of these newly minted voices of reason. This one also comes to us courtesy of the Young Turks. In fact, it is the creator of the show, Cenk Uygur. Now, Cenk has been a passionate, some would say vicious, unhinged, hysterical critic of Trump and MAGA and conservatives generally for many, many years. And yet, 2 weeks ago, he tweeted that he is now somehow feeling optimistic after the guy he despised and the movement he has opposed with his whole heart and soul just won. He wrote, quote, "I've been trying to figure out why I'm more optimistic now than I was before the election, even though I was so against the guy who won. I know now. MAGA is not my mortal enemy, and neither is the extreme left. My mortal enemy is the establishment, and they have been defeated." Now, despite being a far-left commentator who has demonized conservatives for literally decades, he now says that MAGA is not his enemy. The establishment is his enemy. In other tweets and comments, he's called for unity between the two sides.
Real quick, what doesn't make sense to me is that he always calls, and I'm talking about Cenk Uygur, Cenk always calls Donald Trump this fake populist. He's a fake populist. He's not like my boyfriend, Bernie Sanders. No, Donald Trump, he's a fake populist. He calls him a fake populist, but yet the establishment has been defeated? Well, what is it, Cenk? Is he a populist who's against the establishment, or is he part of the establishment? Like, how is Donald Trump winning, defeating the establishment in your eyes, if Donald Trump is this fake populist?
He's criticized the extreme left, or as he now apparently calls them, the max left, and has assured us that if the folks on both sides can unite against the villainous establishment, we will be invincible. Last week, he appeared on the PBD podcast to explain this new approach, which he won't really admit is a new approach, but even so, here you go.
Here's what my left-wing friends don't understand. They think you guys are all MAGA, and MAGA means it's a cult, and you're never going to disagree with Trump. You're never going to disagree with each other, and that you are like their father's Republicans. But you're not their father's Republicans. And so our side, I've been trying to get them to realize that Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, all these folks that take the money, they're not on your side. They're on the establishment side, right? And guys, today, I think that, we could do something historic. I think that we could actually unite the left flank and the right flank. And I've got a model for how to do that, and I want to run it by you guys. Before, when I battled the right wing, it was a wall, right? I'm just like, nobody's listening to one another. They're just doing talking points. I hated it. And then MAGA looked like they were 100%. I'll be honest. I mean, in 2020, I was super pissed, and I said, look, I don't want to talk to Trump supporters. All I hear is the same thing: Trump, 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 and they never waver. So what I'm saying to the left now is, no, I'm seeing something new and different here. The MAGA base has changed. Okay, that doesn't mean they don't like Trump. It doesn't mean that they're not right wing. But there is a significant portion of the MAGA base now that is, in my opinion, right-wing populists who are actually anti-establishment, actually anti-corruption, actually anti-war. And what I'm trying to tell the left is, take the win. Take the win. We've been standing opposed here for 20 years, trying to cut the Pentagon, trying to be anti-war.
Pay attention to PBD. Like, look at his reaction. Like, it's like he knows he's being fed a BS right now, but he's letting Cenk finish. But you could tell, like, he just wants to say something. I got a kick out of that watching his reaction, because he's looking like we're all thinking, like, Cenk, what are you talking about?
Getting money out of politics. If people say yes, for God's sake, that's our lost tribe. Those are our right-wing brother and sisters who are Americans, who are populists, who agree with us. Let's go fight the establishment together, because if we're united, they cannot stop us.
Brothers and sisters. Very nice sentiment. Cenk says that he has a plan. In fact, he said in the interview he had a plan to unite us all. He's all about unity. And he says that the MAGA base has changed. Now it is actually anti-establishment, anti-corruption, and anti-war. But there are some rather significant problems here. And the first and most obvious is that the MAGA base has always been anti-establishment, anti-corruption, and anti-war. Those have been by far the defining features of the base from day one. But Cenk pretends that this was only a recent development so that, again, he can avoid actually admitting that he was wrong. In fact, he goes further. He takes credit. He pretends that the MAGA base has come to him, that this is a left-wing win, basically. Now, the other problem, and it's a big one, is that Cenk extends this olive branch to Trump supporters and praises them for their stand against corruption and war. But here's what he was saying about Donald Trump as recently as last October.
He's a dictator. He's a fascist. That's not hyperbole. So, and here I'll upset a bunch of people on the left. Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley are not fascists. They're terrible people for other reasons, but they've never done a coup against America. They don't use direct Nazi quotes that Trump does. The only fascist that is an actual threat to democracy is Donald J. Trump. He already tried to end this democracy once. And guys, last thing. The other day, he said, immigrants are poisoning the blood of our nation. That quote has only been used by Adolf Hitler and Donald J. Trump. So he's telling you ahead of time, I'm a Nazi. It's not like I didn't warn you. I used absurd Hitler quotes. I pulled them out of history and I said them for no reason, just to let you know I am a Nazi.
All right, by the way, that was an interview that Cenk did when he was running for president, because apparently he ran for president. Now, I follow politics for a living. I literally never heard that he ran for president. I did not once did that news cross my radar. So, in other words, the run did not go very well. I think is you may be surprised to learn. So,
To be fair, Cenk is still on his, Trump's a fascist, even after this whole talks of unity. I mean, I've done videos recently where he was on Tim Pool, he was talking to Trigonometry, and he's still arguing that Trump is a fascist of some sort. So he is still arguing. So he wants to unite MAGA and the left or whatever. He wants to unite, but yet he's still calling Trump a fascist. It's like he's all over the place.
anyway, let me see if I understand this correctly. Trump is a fascist Nazi dictator, and yet his win makes you optimistic for the country, and the supporters of the fascist Nazi dictator are not your enemies? They're your...
Exactly. Like, what is this whole thing that Cenk is on? How can you sit there and say that, oh, MAGA is not my enemy, but then you're calling the person that we support a fascist? So then what does that make us? It makes us fascist supporters, right? Make it make sense, people.
brothers and sisters? Is that it, Cenk? You're optimistic that Hitler himself was elected? And you want to unite with Hitler's supporters? You want to unite with literal, actual Nazis? So what are you, coming out as a Nazi sympathizer? Is that what's happening? Now, you might say that I'm not being very charitable. Now, after all, that was a year ago. Now, granted, I could probably find about 300 examples of Cenk calling Trump Hitler in the last 2 months, but I didn't feel like spending that long watching Cenk clips on YouTube, so this is the one we're going with. Maybe there aren't any clips more recent than that. I don't know. Maybe Cenk had this conversion experience and became a reasonable moderate right after that segment was recorded. Maybe he's been a reasonable person for a whole year. Now, that would mean he spent 53 years of life as a left-wing crackpot and 1 year as a rational human being.
It's a good thing that you got channels like mine, like Cool Vic over here, to show you what exactly Cenk has been saying over the last few months or so. So subscribe to my channel, smash the like button if you enjoy content like this. Let's see what else Matt has to say.
But they won't admit it. At the very least, these are people who ignored and probably scoffed at and demeaned the conservatives who told them that the left was on a slippery slope into madness. They didn't listen. So at the very least, they were wrong about that. But they won't admit that either. And yet they show up and they have all their ideas, and we're supposed to listen to them. And they even have the gumption to turn around to conservatives who have been in this movement forever and try to lecture them and say, oh, no, I'll tell you how to really argue on these issues. What the hell do you know? You've been wrong about everything.
Matt Walsh is 100% correct. Like, that's one of the things that's been annoying me about this whole Young Turks awakening deal, is that they're still, first of all, they're still coming at this from like left-wing slants, but also too, they at least were part of the problem. Like, they can't sit there and demonize us for all these years and all of a sudden be like, well, let's talk about unity without at least some sort of an apology. At least, like Matt Walsh said, some sort of humility. Like, okay, cool. Like, you're starting to shy away from the crazy left wing, the left wing extremists. Great. But what about some humility, at least saying that I was wrong? And not only that I was wrong, because at least Anna Kasparian said that she was wrong about MAGA supporters, but maybe also a little bit of a, you know, and I'm sorry, because our show was part of the problem. Our show is part of the reason why people think MAGA are a bunch of extremists or literal Nazis. We're part of the reason why people think Donald Trump is this fascist. We're part of the reason why people think Donald Trump is literally evil German man. We are part of the reason that some of the policies that you see today are there in place. We're part of the reason why things though are the way that they are. And you know what? We're sorry, we were wrong. How hard is it to say that? And I am not going to completely accept people like Cenk Uygur or even Anna Kasparian or some of these other lefties who are all of a sudden seeing a change of heart until we see something like a genuine response such as that. Because otherwise, if you just sit here and try to pretend, oh yeah, listen, and try to pretend to be the person of unity, I just think you're going to be full of it. I just think you're going to be full of BS. And that you're trying to, I hate throwing that word grifter around and grift. Everyone's a grifter nowadays, according to people on the internet. But I'm just going to think you're that, that you're pretty much just not being serious, that you're just kind of trying, you saw that your side lost and now you're trying to be a part of the winning side. So yeah, Matt Walsh is completely 100% right. But what do you guys think about that? Subscribe to my channel. Sound off in the comment section below. And if you did enjoy today's content, I got some more goodies on the screen for you to click away and enjoy.